I am so pleased today to introduce Doug McIntyre. He is part of the Southern California News Group family as an opinion columnist, has been for years. The Daily Breeze and the Press Telegram are part of that. So we are grateful to have him spend some time with us today. Doug was also named in 2010 Best Columnist by the California Newspapers Association. Another little tidbit of information, Doug just finished his first novel called Frank's Shadow, so I'm sure he might mention that in his discussions today. He has been active for over 30 years as a television screenwriter and producer, and he was including being part of the Married with Children, WKRP in Cincinnati, Mike Hammer Private Eye. For 25 years too, a lot of you here in Southern California might know him as McIntyre in the Morning with KBC radio. And he is also, because he's not busy enough, currently working on a play called Fade Away for Tony Award-winning producer Scott Morrow. So anyway, yeah, he's not too busy, but we're so glad to have him here. Before we get started, I want to do a little bit of what I call housekeeping, and that is you have the ability to do chat or to do question and answer by typing them in. But at the end of this session, and when he's done talking, you can also raise your hand, and if you have the ability to have a video or audio, I will be able to unmute you, and you can ask him a question directly. We'll try to get to everybody. We're not sure, where this is going to take us, so I hope you're in for the ride. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Doug McIntyre.
Good afternoon, everybody. Whether you're on the West Coast, good evening to those of you who are in other time zones, hopefully later. And thank you, Julie, for having me today. And thanks to the Daily Breeze and to the Long Beach Press Telegram and the entire Southern California News Group. And I love that Julie has the power to mute and unmute. If only Chris Wallace had that power. God, the debates could be totally different. Anyway, folks, I want to warn you up front, seconds before, because I'm here in the home office, and seconds before we started, a yellow jacket flew in the door. So I'm not actually going to ape what happened with Vice President Mike Pence with the fly in the head for 2 minutes, but I am armed. And if you hear a high-pitched scream, it's because I got stung. But there could be some swatting and some bloodshed before this is over, which will make it so much more entertaining. Normally, by the way, this looks like you've got two headlights coming at you, doesn't it? I'm going to have to put the glasses on the top of the head. Normally, when we do these, and we've done a bunch of these over the years, I like to read a couple of columns, usually 3 columns, and then do a Q&A. But since this is 2020, nothing's normal. So tonight I thought I would just read one column for those of you who might be unfamiliar with my work, and then I'm going to do what I'm calling, for the purposes of today, an improv column, where I've got a couple of thoughts on my mind this morning, this afternoon, whatever time it is. And once we're done with that, we'll be happy to do a Q&A and take as many questions and comments as you want to get into. And now, one of the reasons that I don't want to read a lot of columns is that I have discovered in this year of Zoom meetings that when you have somebody reading from their notes, what you really end up seeing is dandruff and male pattern baldness, because it's usually like this, this is all you see is the top of the person's head. So I'll keep it brief. This was a column that appeared in the Southern California News Group a couple of weeks back. You may have remembered the story when Governor Newsom decided that by 2035, the internal combustion engine would be no longer available for sale in the state of California. So this is a column that the title was Newsom Driving Us to an Electrifying Future. Last week, Governor Gavin Newsom announced a phase out of fossil fuel automobiles in California by the year 2035, which sounds like forever, but it's only 15 years away and will fly by like that. The governor's order means the end of the road for the internal combustion engine in the car capital of the universe. It also begs the question, is there anything Newsom can't do? If Gavin Newsom can prohibit a technology that has served us brilliantly for more than a century without a vote of the people, without a vote of the legislature? Is there any limit on his power? With vast swaths of California still burning from wildfires, Governor Newsom is committed to blaming all the wildfires on climate change, the way Donald Trump seems to be committed to blaming them all on us not raking the forests. Quote, "This is the most impactful step our state can take to fight climate change," said Governor Newsom in a written statement. Quote, "Our cars shouldn't make wildfires worse and create more days filled with smoky air. Cars shouldn't melt glaciers or raise sea levels, threatening our cherished beaches and coastlines." But the problem is, climate change isn't our only problem. We have a housing crisis too. So can Governor Newsom ban the construction of single-family homes and mandate just multi-unit apartment buildings? How about sugary beverages? Obesity is a major health threat. Tobacco, kiss it goodbye. And while we're at it, why not just ban Republicans and save us the trouble of dying or moving to Texas? So while the left worries with reason about President Trump behaving like a proto-dictator, in the bluest of blue states, the novel coronavirus has enabled one of their own to assume powers no governor has wielded since Earl Warren pushed for the internment of 100,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. "We're not taking anything away," says Newsom with a straight face. "We're providing an abundance of new choices and new technology, and being agnostic about how we get to zero emissions," he added. Two choices you won't have, by the way, are regular and premium. So I went out to the driveway to break the news to my babies. "I have 3 cars, and I have bad news for 2 of you," I said, looking directly at my weekends only 1980 Gas Hog and my everyday 2014 Chevy Impala. "I'm afraid I'll have to let 2 of you go." The wife's 2017 Chevy Volt sighed with relief, although to be honest, it's hard to imagine anybody driving a Volt in 15 years or today. Cars come and cars go. When I was a kid, the world was populated with fantastic automobiles with evocative names like Barracuda, Fury, Comet, Cutlass, and Galaxy. Today we have 320i's, A4s, and E350s. And I don't know if these are cars or my good and bad cholesterol levels. But Governor Newsom has promised us an abundance of new choices, and here's what some of them might look like. The Nissan Newsom, perfect for 2035. It comes with wraparound mirrors and dual hot airbags. It's not only emission-free, the Newsom is made from 100% recycled campaign promises and gets an impressive 40 miles to the gallon of hairspray. The Infiniti Q45 for 2035 will be a new conspiracy edition muscle car, perfect for fans of President Trump. Hey, if that hack Lincoln can have a car named after him, why can't DJT? The Q45 will have the best motor, better than all the other motors, no seatbelts, and it's a flex fuel vehicle running on either hydroxychloroquine or coal, face mask not included. The Dodge Garcetti is a back-to-basics family sedan, but it's also an SUV, a roadster, a subcompact, a motorcycle, and a bilingual submersible. The safest car ever built. It's perfect for the risk-adverse. A car, a truck, whatever, for all people, all the time. The GMC Mitch McConnell is not only carbon neutral, it only has neutral, no drive and no reverse. And that's the genius of it. It just sits there and goes nowhere. So how much polluting can it do? The Feinstein 2035 edition is the Feinstein 500. It's a steady as she goes, time-tested luxury automobile for the socially conscious driver who wants to feel like an agent of change without actually experiencing any bumps in the road. And finally, maybe mercifully, the Ford Fauci is good for the environment and the perfect vehicle for a pandemic. The Fauci not only seats 6, it seats them 6 feet apart. The COVID edition Ford Fauci comes sans roof to let in as much virus-killing UV radiation as possible with dual ventilators standard. And if none of these new rides tickle your fancy, fear not, because by 2035, we just might have Jerry Brown's crazy train to get us from Bakersfield to Fresno, a steal at only $100 billion. Now you know why I'm only reading one of these. Anyway, I do appreciate your being here today. And this is, of course, the Healthy Living Expo that goes on for the next 2 weeks. And the people who know me best, when they heard that I was participating in a Healthy Living Expo, got a real good belly laugh out of that, because they know how I've lived, and it's been many things. Healthy wasn't one of them. In fact, about, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, I guess, I was at a Vons in Burbank buying the junk that I eat, just, bachelor shopping. And the woman at the checkout register looks at the ho-hos and the sodas and gummy bears and everything else. And she looks up at me, and by the way, I was 40. She looks at me and she says, are your mom and dad out of town? So clearly I'm the perfect person to be talking to you on a Healthy Living Expo. And I have no practical medical advice to offer, but I do have some general advice that I have learned in my dotage. I know that healthy living is usually tied to diet, exercise, genetics, and luck. But it also is tied to the amount of stress that you have in your life. And we have a surplus of stress these days for all the obvious reasons. It's also your health and your well-being is enhanced by love and a sense of purpose. And these are in short supply today. As I said, not stress, we get tons of that, but love has given away too much ground to anger and to hatred. And it's hard to have a sense of purpose if you've been sidelined by COVID, either through illness or through unemployment. The sense of purpose is something that I really want to talk a bit about, because as we get older, it's essential that we find reasons to get up and keep going forward, to keep living our lives. And if you have physical disabilities, obviously those challenges have to be factored into what it is that we do. But in general, whether it's a job that you love and you still want to continue to work into your senior years, or it's charity work at the church, the synagogue, the mosque, or it's some volunteer organization, recreational activity, whatever it is, even if it's going out on the lawn and telling those damn kids to get off your lawn, if that's what you're into, knock yourself out. But the important thing is to stay busy. And it's hard because culturally, we really shunt our elderly to the side. The older you get, the less relevant you are to marketers, to the pop culture, unless, of course, you're running for president of the United States, in which case, the older you are, apparently, the better. But nonetheless, I do struggle with that term, senior citizen. I turned 60 3 years ago now. In November, I turned 63. So I like to see myself as a junior senior, technically, And I make a point, though, to throw away every piece of mail that comes in from the AARP, just out of spite. And they send me a lot of it. And if it's not them, it's the Neptune Society. So I'm pushing back against that. But it is humbling because, we like to talk ourselves into these catchphrases like 63 is the new 43. And that's maybe true if you're 62. But try telling 63 is the new 43 to the brunette at the end of the bar, and she'll very quickly point out that, no, you're 63. And in my childhood friends who are all hitting the same mark this year, we've discussed repeatedly that when Franklin Roosevelt was our age, he died. So that's a real eye-opener. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of life left and a lot of things to do. In fact, that had a lot to do with why I left radio, because once I turned 60, I had this huge list of things that I wanted to try. And I was doing morning drive, getting up at 3:30, 3:45 in the morning, and it just wasn't possible. So I took the plunge, and I'm really glad I did, except for the fact that, I can barely afford, I'm not going to stand up because I've only got the shirt and the jacket. I can't afford pants on this salary. But nonetheless, the calendar keeps flipping, the clock keeps ticking, and we do keep aging. And that brings us back to the challenge of how do we find viability and relevance in a culture that really is only interested in right now and tomorrow. They're not really that interested, and they haven't been for some time. You know, this is sort of baked into America's DNA. We were the New World. It was New England. It was New York. It was a conscious break with the old way of doing things. But now that's been taken and it's been shoved into a microwave, and it's been juiced up. It is literally impossible to stay technologically state of the art, because every time somebody writes a piece of software, it comes up with a new whatever, it enables them to make 5 more of them or even faster. Human beings can't live like that. Biologically, we are wired to live in the rhythm of nature, which means local sunrise to local sunset. And yet we're up all night, either on Facebook or Zappos.com, or chasing the opening, the futures markets in Asia, whatever you're doing, Korean porn, whatever you're into, we're up all night. And we still feel like we're falling further and further behind. And it's a real challenge. But there's something else that's happening that I think is very profound. And that is, in all this technology that has come in, one of the least explored aspects of it is the fact that the internet has liberated people from geography. That Thomas Friedman in the New York Times wrote a book a couple years ago that got a lot of play, called "The Earth is Flat," talking about how it's global competition. The B- student on the west side of Los Angeles or in Riverside County is in competition with A students in Thailand or wherever. Well, it's done something else too. And this is my observation, and maybe it's just a crackpot theory, but hey, this is the age for crackpot theories, if ever there was one. I really think that observationally, the next generation coming up, or the generation after that, does not have the same sense of nation state, does not have the same sense of commitment to community, which doesn't mean that there aren't people, doing scouting or whatever. But I mean, they are plugged into the world, and their interests can be anywhere. And they grow up playing video games worldwide. Their friends could be on the other side of the planet. This is not just, by the way, an American phenomenon. This is happening all over the world. When you look at surveys of younger people and how they feel about their nation's flag, whether it's the Stars and Stripes or it's the St. John's Cross, whatever the country, you'll find that there's less emotional attachment to it than those of us with gray hair have, regardless of political identification. And that's a really profound thing. It doesn't mean that, and we've seen it reflected. We've seen school districts that have no PTA anymore because they couldn't get any parents to sign up for it. And it doesn't mean that they're not involved, that they don't care, except what it does mean is that they're finding other channels for their activism. But what does it mean as a country? And I think that we're living it right now. We're seeing that right now, where, we have people in this very turbulent time actively talking about civil war, about whether or not this upcoming election could result in America dissolving. And that's powerful stuff. Literally something that I did not believe when I was a kid I would ever live to see. I thought that had been settled at Appomattox Courthouse in 1865. But the difference, of course, is that even during that horrible crisis, the American Civil War, there was a geographic border. If America had split, well, from Texas to Florida, the Southeast would have been an independent nation versus the rest of what was the United States of America. But today, the divisions are like a shotgun blast. They're, and it could be family by family. It could be, house by house. And we've all experienced this. That's the one thing social media has done. It has allowed us to know that, the kids we grew up with on the schoolyard, some of them have real hardcore politics and some have real hardcore politics in the opposite direction. And you wonder, how did we grow up together to have such profoundly different views of where the country is and where the world is in 2020, but it's happening all over. It's happening all over the world. So systems are collapsing. I called it the Napster effect. When, if you remember the music file sharing website Napster, where people could upload songs that they like and then send them out to their friends. And it really was an atom bomb going off in the music industry. It almost completely killed the music industry, which has come back a bit. But it was terrible because basically you had a generation grow up think music is free. Now, how the musicians are supposed to get paid and live seemed to be totally missing from that equation. But you saw almost overnight a major American entertainment industry take a tremendous hit. Well, now, of course, with COVID, everything's taking a tremendous hit in the entertainment industry, which is obviously a huge blow here in Southern California. And we can certainly talk about that during the Q&A. But I used the Napster effect as an example of systems falling apart. And we see all kinds of radical notions, ideas that were unthinkable being thrown out about doing away with the Electoral College or packing the Supreme Court or whatever it is. People openly discussing right and left whether or not the United States has outlived its purpose. And you know, nothing goes on forever. Certainly there are millions and millions and millions of people living in Russia to this day who still can't believe that the Soviet Union isn't there anymore and would like to see it come back. One of them, Vladimir Putin, who called it the breakup of the Soviet Union, the greatest disaster in the history of the world. So I actually think that the breakup of the United States would be the greatest disaster in the history of the world, even through these troubled times. But, and this comes to really the big point, I don't get a vote. And frankly, you don't get a vote either. I mean, we'll vote on election day, or maybe you're voting now, but ultimately the next generation and the generation after that will decide what world they want to live in, and they will shape it. Because we can coach them, we can try to teach them, we can try to pass on our values and our heroes, but it's up to them. A couple months ago, during some of the civil disturbances in Los Angeles, a statue of George Washington was torn down in Grant Park and vandalized. And I followed up on what happened to it. And it's in a warehouse. The LA County arts people have it. And I asked, when, is it going back up? And the answer is to be determined. And I think that that's a tiny thing, but it's a profound thing. Because while I believe that George Washington should be restored to his pedestal in America's second largest city, I'm only one voice, and maybe enough of us could say George Washington should be put back on his pedestal for a variety of reasons, not just because of his historic enormity to America, but also because otherwise we're allowing mobs to literally just pull down anything they don't like, and the local authorities capitulate. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the next generation to decide whether or not George Washington stays on his pedestal, both physically and metaphorically, because the future belongs to those who are going to live it as the present. And the best we can do is offer our advice and counsel. Now, I'm going to end with this, and then we'll go to a Q&A if you want to, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about anything that I brought up or anything you want to bring up. Everything is always fair game. But this past May, I became a grandfather. Now, I am the proud stepfather to two boys. So this is the first baby in my life, because I was already living in California when my brother and sister's kids, my nieces and nephews, were born on the East Coast. And while I saw them, I didn't get to spend a lot of infant time, and all of you parents know how quick kids grow. And so this is my first baby experience. And it's a stunningly beautiful experience. So while some of the things that I've talked about might seem frightening, what the hope that I take, not just in this horrifically difficult year of 2020 with COVID and political turmoil and racial strife and unemployment and business, it's fires, it's just all this terrible stuff. But you see a newborn baby and you realize there is a new beginning. There's always a beginning. There's always a chance to start over, to flip the Etch-a-Sketch and give it a good shake and to start fresh. And hopefully that's what will happen going into 2021 and beyond. All right, let's get the Chris Wallace of the Southern California News Group out here with her awesome powers to mute people.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
Okay,
clear.
this is all fun. So we have a couple of people have raised their hands. We have John Halligan. So I'm going to allow you to talk, John, and you should be able to put yourself off of mute. There you go.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Doug.
Hi, John. How are you?
But fine. I've talked to you a couple of times before. We have the same birthday, Veterans Day, but you are about 27 years younger than me. I'm 90 now. And you said we could talk about anything. I'm going to ask you the first bumper song that you played on November 29th, 2001 at just before midnight. What was that?
John, I gotta tell you, I'm lucky I'm wearing pants.
Okay, it was something. Something.
I have no idea what song I played.
It was something sung by Frank Sinatra, one of your favorite
Oh
singers.
yeah, his version of George Harrison's something.
Yeah, because George Harrison died that day, November 29th.
Yeah, that was, yeah. I remember we had my brother Jeff, who's no longer with us, who was a huge George Harrison fan. I talked to him that night because he had encyclopedic knowledge. And the great Jim Ladd from our sister station, KLOS, who knew George Harrison personally. But boy, it's hard to believe it's been that many years. But it's hard to believe all of these things. It's hard to believe 9/11 next year will be 20 years.
Huh. Yeah. And am I still talking to you?
You are.
Yeah, you and Ken Minyard were voted the best talk show hosts in LA on KABC. You know who voted?
No.
Just
Ken
me.
Minyard and my wife?
Just me. Just me.
Oh, just you. Well, John, thank you for your vote, sir. I deeply appreciate it.
Is Ken Minyard still alive?
Oh, yeah, he's
Yeah,
fine.
he's
He
great.
lives up in Oxnard. He's doing great.
Yeah. And what was the name of your book again that you just had published?
Well, it's called Frank Shadow, but I'm in the baby step beginnings of the long, long road for fiction for publishing. So if I'm fortunate enough to find a good publisher for it, I will tell the world, I promise you. Thank you for the call, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for being with us today.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. We also have, where is it?
Just raise your hands, folks.
Yeah, we've got 3 up there. Oh, here it is. Okay. We have Harry. I'm going to let Harry talk now. You can unmute yourself. There you go. This is Harry.
Hi, Harry.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
And you mentioned a grandchild. My oldest grandchild got her driver's license Monday. So
Wow.
I'm a bit older than you.
Yeah, well, we know what the first car that every kid gets, you kiss that car goodbye. That car has no chance.
Right.
But it's so, I play senior softball, which I love. And I played this morning. And every game we call it the hip replacements versus the stents. But I can't wait to play ball with my grandson and kids, with T-ball and all, they're out there at 4 and 5 and they are already. So I'm hoping that he has an interest in it, but we try to push them to the things that we love and then, who the hell knows?
I understand. I have a question about the Time magazine cover. It's over your shoulder. Who is that? Who is that a picture of?
That is the famous comedy playwright George Kaufman,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
from 1938. And
Okay.
I got I bought a collect autographs, and that I had his autograph cut into that. Yeah. But he was an early inspiration. He wrote the Marx Brothers plays Coconuts and Animal Crackers.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and he was a huge inspiration to me when I was, in fact, speaking of the Marx Brothers, hang on one second. I got to show you this because it's up here. As long as we're doing
Okay.
as long as we're doing show and tell. This is the show and tell portion of the seminar. This is an opening night telegram. Back in Broadway days, when you had a show open, people would send telegrams to wish you tell you to break a leg. This is a telegram that Groucho Marx sent to the songwriters Burt Kalmar and Harry Ruby in Wilmington, Delaware, at the DuPont Theater on May 7th, 1941. And they had a show trying out of town, and the telegram from Groucho says, "Good luck, and if you have any old chorus girls you're not using, I'm at the Warwick."
Sounds like Groucho.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the call, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
All right. Keep up any work at this point.
Understood.
Thank you, John. All right, we have a question from Philip. Let me put him on.
Okay.
Philip, you can unmute yourself. There you go, sir.
Hi, Philip.
Hey, Doug, I listened to you for years. I really enjoyed everything that you offered us in the morning. But I also wondered, would you tell us a little bit more about your wife? Because Penny Pizer, I believe her name is, you mentioned her a lot, but I'd like to know what is her role in your life?
Well, you have to understand, I work for her, so, you know. There's Penny Pizer. That was her first headshot. She's an actress, and this was taken actually by a very famous photographer named Bruce Weber. But back then it was $25 a picture. So, but Penny is, you know, there's a lot of family history. Penny didn't know it, but my brother went to college with Penny's brother Jim Pizer, who, by the way, is the Secretary of Education for the state of Massachusetts, which has the most successful public education system in the country. But I digress. So Jeff went to college with Jim Pizer, and he had been to the House. Penny's dad was a congressman for 5 terms, 5 non-consecutive terms. That takes some doing. And he worked on, we would come down to help on the campaign. And my brother did an internship at Universal Studios in the 70s with Penny's uncle, John Pizer, who was a director and a producer. So my whole life, I've been hearing, when I moved to California, did you ever meet Penny Pizer? And I knew her because I had seen All the President's Men and The In-Laws, and I'd seen her in the movies. But our paths never crossed until I was filling in for Tim Conway Jr. over on KLOS. And Penny had been booked as a guest. So I was the guest host, and I was just going to talk to whoever the guests were, and it turned out to be her. And the next thing I know, I've been married to her for almost 20 years. So, so it's kind of a fun story, though.
Great story.
At least I think it is. At least I have to say that because she may see the video.
Okay. That's a great story.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the call, sir. Appreciate it.
I might say that sounds like, what's his name, and Danny Thomas's daughter, Marlo. And
Okay, so I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there, but we have Elsa has a question. So let me see if she can unmute herself.
Okay.
There you go, Elsa.
Hi, Elsa. How are you?
I'm fine. I don't know if you remember me or not, but I gave you a big old hug and I took a picture with you 2 years ago in Long Beach when we had the wellness last year.
Yeah, that's back when we used to be able to do these things in person.
Yeah. Oh, I got the biggest thrill, and I got my friend Virginia to read your articles every week in the Press Telegram as I'd like to find out, how do you find your topics, and do you find yourself waking up in the night? I used to listen to your night show
with ideas.
With ideas.
Well, here let's start with that part. Waking up, every writer it tells the story about George Frederick Handel, who claimed that he dreamt the entirety of Messiah. and woke up the next morning and just wrote the whole thing straight out because it had come to him fully born in a dream. That never happens to me. I wake up in the middle of the night with and I always have pens and a pad, on the night table. I wake up and I think, oh, I just had this fantastic idea, and I jot it down so I don't forget it. The next morning, first of all, half of it I've written on the table. I've missed the pad completely. And then what I haven't written on the pad, I'll look at it and I'm trying to figure out what was this: snowshoes, penguins, sauerkraut. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I'm not one of those people who has, but what has made me wake up in the middle of the night is the first part of your question. The deadline for my column, the opinion page, just so you know, this is a little inside dirt on the Southern California News Group, on the Press Telegram and the Daily Breeze. The opinion section goes to press on Fridays for Sunday. So it's a bit of a challenge because the news cycle is so rapid today that a lot of times things happen that you could write a column about an issue, and then in the age of Twitter and with the way the news cycle spins, the thing you wrote on Thursday by Sunday may be, obsolete. In fact, at this point, and don't let management hear this, but I really do question whether or not the whole idea of opinion columnists is obsolete. I'm serious. Do you know anybody who's lacking opinions in 2020? I mean, do you know anyone who says, hey, where can I get an opinion? And part of what's hurt the business is that because we've blown up any faith in facts and officialdom, you used to give opinion columns used to be written by people who had a certain amount of gravitas or expertise in an area. And the public, whether they agreed or disagreed, just say, well, I'd like to see his or her perspective. But now everybody's Twitter feed, everybody's Instagram account, everybody's Facebook page is in essence a live stream of opinion columns. But that's what makes finding a topic so difficult, and why I wake up in the middle of the night wondering, what am I going to write about tomorrow? And because anything political is so provocative, people are so angry, I strive like crazy to try to find anything other than Donald Trump or Joe Biden to write about, because I feel at this point it's been picked to death. People have made up their minds, but unfortunately the news cycle, it's very hard to ignore. The President of the United States got COVID. It's very, very hard to ignore that. The debates are very hard to ignore. So, but the truth is that I do look to balance the column. If I have 2 or 3 columns in a row that are based on a political issue, then I try to make sure that that 4th one is about something that's on the lighter side, or find a lighter angle, like I did with what I tried to do anyway with the Gavin Newsom internal combustion engine column I read you, make up some funny car names, just so because otherwise it gets too grim. Anyway, thank you for the question. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I got one last one.
All right.
I live in the city of Downey, and I belong to the Friends of the Library. And since the renovation 2 years ago, everybody's getting antsy because they want the library to open. Do you think at some point in time you would be able to come and speak there?
Sure.
When it really? Oh,
sure,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not doing anything.
Oh. We'll take you to lunch, and thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, you can just shoot me an email, Doug@DougMcIntyre.com.
All right. So now we have Carolyn. Let's see, let her talk. Can I unmute Carolyn? There you go. You can ask your question.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Doug.
How are you?
I'm fine. I have to tell you how much I appreciated your show. You started my day off on a wonderful note every morning, and I almost cried on your last show. Anyway, from you, I learned so much about new entertainers like John Pizzarelli and Stacey Kent from your love of jazz.
Right.
But I have to say, the most favorite story that you ever told was when you were doing the Thanksgiving turkey.
Oh yeah, the turkey story. I used to do that every
The turkey
Thanksgiving.
story I will never forget. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
I
I've tried to
don't have
forget it.
I don't have a question. I just want to tell you how much I've enjoyed you and the wife.
The wife, yes.
You always referred to Penny as the wife.
The wife, right. She was the girlfriend, then the fiance, and now the wife.
And yeah,
Yeah.
but the turkey story was the very best.
Yeah, that's, folks, just, I'll do it as brief as possible. Just take my advice. Never try to cook Thanksgiving turkey when you've never cooked one before and you're drunk. Don't do it. It doesn't work out. All right, let's just leave it at that, okay?
That's really good advice there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been earned the hard way, yes.
Okay. So we have Michael on here, Michael Springer, allowing you to talk. You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, Michael, how are you?
Good. I just wanted to thank Doug for his every Sunday column. I get the Orange County Register, and I look for it every Sunday morning, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for supporting the newspaper. And let me just say, I say this every year at the Expo. The media, people are mad at the media, and not without reason. There's a lot of reasons to be mad at the media. And it's another industry that can oftentimes get very inside its own orthodox bubble. But the newspapers are tremendously important to the health of the country. And, you know, when I talk to people who say, well, I don't get the paper anymore. I said, well, where do you get your news? I said, well, I read it online. I said, well, where do you think they're getting it? They're linking, you know, they're linking it to newspaper articles. And while blogs and all those things and talk radio and the cable news show, all those things have their place. It is very, very important to have reporters who can go out and cover especially local stories, which get swept aside. I mean, one of the, I'm gonna make this as benign as possible. But in the age of Donald Trump, where every day there's some other salacious or scandalous screaming headline that obsesses everybody and everybody's attention is on that. The city of Los Angeles is building Triple H homeless housing for $740,000 a unit in some cases. The average price is over $500,000 per apartment. And nobody's paying any attention to that. Nobody's paying attention to the local stuff because they're so obsessed. And meanwhile, it's the same cast of characters over and over and over again in local government. And, you know, it begs the question, what problem have they ever solved? And yet they keep getting recycled from office to office. And when they're turned out of one, they go to another. And, you know, Herb Wesson was in the state assembly, and then he went to the city council, and now he wants to be on the LA County Board of Supervisors. And, you know, it's like, well, where's any evidence of effectiveness? And this isn't an ideological issue. This is a competence issue. But it's been completely masked for the last almost 4 years by the Trump tornado in the news media. But the newspapers will still, we all wish that we had more resources. We wish we could be adding reporters. We wish we could have, you know, more resources. But what happens is younger people don't want to read a newspaper, and you know, they just don't have any interest in it. And they think that they're getting the news, and they are getting news, but it's a different experience than reading cover to cover a daily newspaper. Anyway, thank you for supporting the Orange County Register and the Southern California News Group.
All right, we're doing good. Oh my gosh, we got about 15 more minutes, and we've got 2 or 3 more people who want to ask questions. And we've got some questions and answers that I can read to you. So we're doing good. We're doing great. So Kathy Johnson, let me unhook you or unmute you. There you go. Go ahead.
All right, Doug, thank you so much for doing this today. And also, I am a huge fan. I would go for a run in the morning and listen to you, and I just appreciated your reasonable, balanced perspective, and you always added humor. So miss you a lot, but do read your column every Sunday. So
well, thanks, Kathy. Are you still running every day?
I do. But I listen to podcasts now. So, moving on, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, I was thrilled because I am here in Orange County and love that you were the moderator for the speaker series at the Performing Arts Center.
Yeah.
Was wondering if you can share if you are going to continue to do that. I think they're moving it to Long Beach next year.
Thanks for asking about that. I've been working with Kathy Winterhalter and her sister Sue Swan for many years. They are the producers of the Southern California Distinguished Speaker Series program, it's just a great event.
Yes.
And they're in 5 locations. They're in Redondo Beach, Thousand Oaks, the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills, at the Ambassador Auditorium in Pasadena, and last year, or I should say this year, for the first time at the beautiful Segerson Center in Costa Mesa. But because COVID came along, it wiped out the second half of the program. And to try to rebook now, they're going to move the Orange County location to Long Beach. And the upcoming year, I just literally a week ago, I just got this. Hang on a second here. I just got this. Now the schedule is Bob Woodward will be. He was supposed to be with us this year, but it got pushed until early next year. Former President George W. Bush, the historian Douglas Brinkley, Diane Nyad, Tara Westover, Jay Leno is going to be with us for 5 nights. Malala Yousafzai, who's an amazing young woman, Dan Buettner, and former British Prime Minister David Cameron. So I am going to do them. I think I'm going to be doing Long Beach and Redondo.
Okay.
I used to do Thousand Oaks, which is closer to my house, but I think Kathy felt I needed more time in gridlock, so she sent me to Orange County. Yeah.
Do you have any behind-the-scenes insights that are about the program that might be fun to share? You certainly do a lot of work preparing for it, and we appreciate that.
They've all, in their own way, been fascinating. There have been several of them that were, to me, surreal. For instance, many years ago, I did a bunch of. First of all, normally it's just an introduction and a Q&A, and then the speaker speaks. But for the non-political people and the non-scientists, mostly the show business people, they asked me to basically make a show out of it. I stay on the stage the whole time with them and kind of guide conversation. And that is a bigger challenge. This year we had to do Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin together. And that's a lot because you have 2 big stars, 2 people with very long careers, one of whom is a very controversial figure. In fact, we were doing it at the time that Jane was getting arrested every Friday. So on our Thursday night show in Redondo Beach, we literally, she was literally leaving Redondo Beach, going right to the airport to fly to Washington to get arrested. So we had to work around her incarceration schedule. But that was a fascinating experience because there was a lot going on with those 2. Some of the other ones, Bob Redford, the first one I did was Robert Redford, and my wife was in All the President's Men. So they hadn't seen each other in many, many years, and that was a very sweet experience. So they've all been. One of the really weird ones was Lech Walesa, obviously the Gdansk shipyards, and the former president of Poland, who was fantastic, except he didn't speak a word of English. He spoke in Polish. So his translator was fantastic. I don't know what Lech was saying, but his translator was genuinely tremendous. And there's been a lot of it. John Glenn, there's been a lot of them who are really, really fascinating people to meet.
Thank you.
All right. So we have some questions here. We have Barbara Bennett is saying, I just want to praise Doug, and where can I find him in my press telegram? I'm 20 years in California and 12 in Boca Raton, Florida, and all my life in New York. And I'm 90 this month, and I agree. All we need is love and feel useful. Thank you.
Well, obviously, my column is always in the opinion section, which is a separate section if you have the print papers, in any of the papers, whether it's the Redland Daily Facts or the LA Daily News, it's in the opinion section. And then online, there's a little tab if you look at the websites that says opinions, and you click on that and the column is posted there. So you can find it either. And I post it on Facebook and stuff like that.
Wonderful. All right, let's see. We have Dale Corman wants to know, what is your opinion that the presidential debate should take place even though our president is perhaps still contagious and that he will not debate if it's virtual?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I thought that the presidential debates had really kind of outlived their usefulness before what we saw a week ago Tuesday. I just think that they've been reduced to mostly regurgitating memorized clips from stump speeches, and with literally scripted. They hire, comedy writers to write, one-liners, and they look for opportunities to drop in their zingers. And it's not really, to me, a debate would be, you have a half hour, then this person has a half hour, and then at the end of that, each one gets 15 minutes of rebuttal time, and that's it. Because I just feel that what we've been doing doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. This particular time, the first debate to me was horrific. It was an insult to the term debate. It was just yelling, and Joe Biden didn't equate himself particularly great either, calling the president of the United States a clown and telling him to shut up, man, even though I think globally in multiple languages, people around the sphere were yelling, shut up, man, at some point. But I mean, short of handing Chris Wallace a gun, a chair, and a whip, I don't know what you can do. If one of the candidates' strategy going into the debate is to overtalk the questioner and the other candidate, then the process breaks down. So to me, it's madness that we're going to have a town hall next week. As of now, the president says he's not going to participate, but I don't believe that no matter how he feels, until he has multiple negative tests, it's not fair to the makeup and hair people. It's not fair to anybody. And it does send the wrong message out, in my opinion. But I'm actually rooting for no more debates. I just don't want to. I can't take another one. I mean, during the vice presidential debate, I dipped in and I saw a little of it, and then I went back and watched the Dodgers.
There you go. I'm with you on that one. Hey, we have 2 questions left, and then we can close out the session. Dale had another question, and he's asking, how can Newsom assume that everyone in this huge state would be able to afford purchasing an expensive electric vehicle, and how can we expect there be enough electricity to support the internet, and that is essential for all appliances and Zooming, that we will be around for more than 15 years in the future?
Well, I don't, again, my point on the column was, I don't know how, I don't know what limits are on executive power anymore, literally. If you can just say, as a governor, with no vote of the legislature and no vote of the people, that this product is just banned in the state of California. I don't think it's going to happen on the timeline that the governor. I want to make this clear. I own an electric car. I mean, I mentioned we have a Chevy Volt. I think that it's a great technology. The air is significantly cleaner, other than the fires, than it was when I first got out here 30, 40, almost 40 years ago. California, LA air came in, regular and super chunk. It was this orange, the planes that try to land and bounce off it. We rarely have that anymore, short of the fires. So I'm all for taking steps to make the air cleaner. But you can't crush an entire industry doing so. The public wants electric vehicles. And my feeling is if you build a better mousetrap, people will buy the better mousetrap. And to just simply legislate it, I don't, this is one of these things where Newsom says it now, he gets some headlines, he burnishes his green credentials, but let's see what happens when the lobbyists are done. My guess is my guess is it doesn't happen. And yes, you'd have to have more. Look, we need more electric generating plants now because we have rolling blackouts every time we get into these terrible heat waves. And I do want to make just real quickly this one point. The concern about climate change in California is not a bunch of hooey. It's a real problem. It is contributing to the forest fires. It's causing a problem with droughts. Now, the question is, what do we do about it? If the answer is you just can't just shut down, people's ability to make a living. You got to find that balance. It's the same thing with COVID. I mean, that's one of the problems. I mean, yes, I totally understand that social distancing and quarantining and all that stuff to control the virus, but at some point we have to be able to go back and have lives because the entire social safety net, the entire system requires people working to pay taxes. And if they're not working, there's going to be real pain sometime next year when the reality sets in for city budgets and county budgets and the state budget. So it's, it's the balancing act of being responsible custodians of both the environment and the public health, obviously, but keeping an eye towards the reality. People will eventually have to go back to work and they're going to have to drive to get there. So, I think the 2035 deadline is really just a Hail Mary pass.
That's awesome. This is the best last question to finish this session. Nancy McGlinchey wants to know why do you keep calling dear Penny the wife?
I call her the wife because I think it's funny. And here's the thing. I get more email from people outraged because she was on the radio show. She was the girlfriend and then she was the fiance and then she became the wife. And when I can attribute to her fictitious, outrageous claims, it's better that her name not be associated with them. But I do get angry emails where people say, "How dare you disrespect?" And let me just say this publicly: if she objected, it wouldn't be in the paper.
Very good point. Do you have any last comments in closing for us today, Doug?
Well, we're just a couple weeks away from an enormously significant event in America. Not just the presidential election, but how we react to it. And I'm praying that win or lose, the supporters of President Trump will accept the verdict of the American public. Obviously, if they win, it'll be easy to accept, but that goes true for former Vice President Biden. And am I hopeful? I'm hopeful that will happen, but am I confident that will happen? And the answer is no. I'm afraid this is an extremely turbulent period in American history. And at some point, this has to burn itself out because you can't keep living like this. And those of us, and most of us are old enough to remember 1968, which was a horrible, horrible year. Anybody who's nostalgic for 1968 wasn't there. But eventually, as the Vietnam War and the various rights movements and assassinations and all that, and finally kind of ended with Watergate, put a period, and we kind of were exhausted by it all and just spent 10 years dancing to disco music and hip hugger bell bottoms, driving AMC Pacers, and we just, and then it started up again. So we have these spasms, and I'm hoping that this election will, one way or another, offer some kind of a period, but I suspect that won't be the case, unfortunately. And obviously the election also has some hugely important ballot measures that we didn't really get into today, but there's some really big issues facing California on the ballot. What I think is an assault on Prop 13, the Prop 22, which would allow people to, AB 5, which is really what Prop 22 is trying to undo, to me is a total failure as a law, because look at how many industries have had to get exemptions from it. And when you pass a law and then you have to go over and over and over again and revise it because you've crushed this. I mean, to say that a nail salon, the beauty salon, the hairdresser is not covered by AB5, but the manicurist is all you need to know that it's a bad law. So there's lots of local stuff that has to be decided as well, of huge importance. But obviously, the world's attention will be on the top of the main event, which is President Trump versus former Vice President Biden, and we're going to have to see what the people decide and what they decide to do going forward.
Well, that's we've had a full hour, so I want to thank everybody, especially our host for today, our guest for today. Doug, it's been great. We've had a great turnout. I could not be more pleased. If anybody wants to see what else we're doing over the next couple weeks, you could just type in Healthy Living Virtual Expo, and it should come up to the website. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you all again for attending, and thanks again, Doug. Have a good day, y'all.